Well, thank you very much indeed for that wonderful response. Can you hear me at the back? Bad luck. I'd retired. It was all done. I was enjoying life. There, I know. People like you that have got me back. I packed up. I thought I've achieved the goal, everything I really set out to do. A government elected 5 years ago, committed to delivering the Brexit we fought for, campaigned for, and voted for. And I'm back because the political establishment, left to its own devices, has completely betrayed the 2019 Conservative vote and indeed 17.4 million Brexiteers. We've been betrayed, and I tell you what, I have decided we are not going to take it any longer. We're going to fight back and we're going to win. But I have to say politics, it would appear, is worse 5 years on than when I left it. I genuinely believe that our democratic process is directly under threat. What happened to me in Clacton last week, when a young woman threw a milkshake in my face, and then the mob violence that we saw in Barnsley today, is an attempt to stop me speaking. It's an attempt to stop us campaigning. It's an attempt to crush democracy. It is worrying. It is frightening. And it's noticeable that most of the people there today were young men and women either at or freshly out of our university system. Their minds are being poisoned in school, in university, and it's plain wrong. Now, for me, this is very difficult because I actually like going out, meeting people. I'm perfectly happy. You can disagree with me. You can call me rude names. If you think about it, when we commemorated those last remnants of that generation that engineered and took part in D-Day last week, well, some of us commemorated it, others went home early, but I mean, there you are. If that wasn't for the right for us to agree to disagree verbally and not physically, I don't know what was. All I can say is that whilst it is concerning, and whilst of course it does make me thoughtful, and I may need to change tactics slightly, but I'm going to make one promise to you and the tens of thousands watching this live, online, and the media, and my promise is this: I will not surrender to the mob. I will not stop campaigning. This democratic process must continue. Now, as June said earlier, something is going on out there. This party, this campaign has got real momentum. Millions of people around the breakfast table on Sunday were talking about reform. What is it? What's it all about? Many more millions are weighing up as we speak exactly what they're going to do on July the 4th. We are making an incredible impact. The last poll put out by YouGov an hour and a half ago has us now nationally, and that includes, of course, England, Scotland and Wales, has us just 1 point behind the Conservatives. and we are leading. We are leading the Conservatives, albeit Labour are way ahead, but we're leading the Conservatives in the North East. We're leading them in Yorkshire and the Humber. We're leading them in the North West. We're leading them in the East Midlands, in the West Midlands, and in many, many seats here in Eastern Region. Something remarkable is about to happen. And I have to say that today we've seen the Conservative manifesto. As Tommy Trinder would have said, you lucky people. All right, if you're under 40, you won't get it, but never mind. And by the way, on that note, how encouraging it is tonight to see at the back of the hall so many young people. They're here as well. You know, the idea that young people would come to political meetings was said to be dead and buried. But something's happening. They're back, and that's very, very encouraging and very, very exciting in my view. So yes, today's Conservative manifesto, and guess what? Rishi is going to stop the boats. And if the European Court of Human Rights were to consider, once again, stopping the planes taking off for Rwanda, he might consider leaving the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg. I've got a better solution. Let's leave the European Court of Human Rights now. After all, we did not vote Brexit for a court in Strasbourg to tell us how to manage our border policies. And indeed, they recently, that court, told the Swiss government they must stick to net zero targets. So that's very clear. So that, I mean, who believes that the planes are off to Rwanda in a couple of weeks? Come on, hands up. What a cynical audience, I don't know. But also, they're going to reduce the level of immigration into Britain. Short history lesson. The Conservative Manifesto 2010 said, after Blair had opened the doors in the most unprecedented way, the 2010 manifesto said they would reduce net migration to tens of thousands. The 2015 Conservative Manifesto said they would reduce net migration to tens of thousands. And still people believe them. Because in 2017, anyone having a guess what they said in 2017? We will reduce net migration to tens of thousands, and then, with the big 2019 general election vote on the back of the Brexit Party standing aside in all those seats, giving Boris a free run, they talked about huge reductions in the amount of unskilled labour coming into the country. If they failed us on the last four manifesto pledges, why on earth would anyone believe them on the fifth? I don't, and I don't believe the British public will be gulled by them either. And just think about the numbers. Do you realise 1 in 30 people in this country, think about this, 1 in 30 people in this country has come in the last 2 years alone. It's mind-blowing. And you wonder why you can't get a GP appointment. You wonder why the waiting lists are at historic highs. You wonder why rents have gone up between 20 and 30% since 2021 alone. You wonder why those of us that are older here, our kids or grandkids, are struggling to find any property, either that they can buy or even to get on a social housing list. Think about this number. We have to build a new home, one new home, every 2 minutes in this country just to cope with levels of immigration into Britain over the last 2 years. That is what these people have done to us. And there is not an ounce of what I'm saying that is anti-immigrant or anti-foreigner. We've all got plenty of friends who come from other parts of the world. That's not the issue. And many of us go and work in America or France, or we retire to Spain. That's not the issue. The issue is we cannot cope with this massive population crisis. And that's why I believe this should be the immigration election. The Conservatives can make their false promises. Labour have virtually nothing to say. And it's for us to stand up and say, up with this, we will not put. Now, we've much else to say besides, such as we've got to get the unemployed back to work. It is so unfair. The working population of this country, particularly those of you running small businesses, acting as sole traders, in many cases, people are working longer hours than they've ever worked in their lives. They're paying more tax than they ever paid before. They are being put upon by quangos, by regulators. The deregulation that Brexit promised simply hasn't happened. And it's not right, it's not fair that people who are working are taxed so high to pay for so many who choose not to work. But that's not because they're all lazy and useless and smoking pot all day. Some may be, but for a lot of people on benefits, particularly if they've got kids, they're trapped. Because if they work for more than 16 hours a week, their benefits get cut to the level, they may as well stay on benefits. And psychologically, that's also very bad news and very damaging for people. So our proposal is that no one pays a penny in income tax until they earn £20,000 a year. It'll work. It'll work. And getting people off benefits and back into work means not having to rely on so much unskilled foreign labour coming into the country. And getting people off benefits and into work is going to save the Exchequer a complete fortune. So we've got some really good, radical thinking ideas as to how we can get this country back to work. And it needs to get back to work. Because the other truth that is not being told. Did anyone watch that first debate between Sunak and Starmer? Did you stay awake, sir, to the end? Or? Well done, you. You must have had a Red Bull on the go or something like that. I mean, what no one talks about is debt. No one talks about debt. The fact that our national debt has almost trebled since 2010. And we're now spending on interest £90 billion a year. We're spending as much on debt interest as we're spending, ironically, on education. And I say ironically because it's that generation that are going to have to pay this off in the years to come. The government say it's not our fault. We had the pandemic. The answer to which is you didn't have to lock us down again and again and again. Didn't have to do that. The first one, okay. We didn't know what was coming. But at the time of the second and the third lockdowns, we could see in Florida, we could see in Sweden, people had found better, more intelligent and less damaging ways, not just economically, but actually socially as well, to manage it. But it's okay, because Rishi's good with the numbers. Oh yeah. Let me tell you how good he is. We borrowed 400 billion during the pandemic, and he could have locked it all in when base rates were 0.5%. He didn't do that. So they not only made the wrong decisions, but financially incompetent as well. And we look to Labour, and do we even know what Keir Starmer stands for? He flips and flops on everything. One thing we do know is that this was the man who was pushing hard to overturn the Brexit result. This was the man pushing hard to get us to have a second referendum. This is the man who's determined to sign us up in some form to the European Defence Union. And okay, he's not going to reverse Brexit, but we still under him won't get any fishing or any of the potential benefits. Now look folks, like it or not, we have to face a reality. And that is that this election is over. Labour have won. It's done. It's done. The Conservatives have lost votes to us, but they're also now losing votes in the South to Liberal Democrats. They've lost. They will be smashed to pieces. But what sort of opposition could they provide? Well, they've spent 4 years in office, apart from all the Downing Street parties, you know, and stuff like that. They've spent 4 years in office constantly arguing amongst themselves. They keep getting rid of leaders. They keep changing ministers. In opposition, they will be at each other's throats like you can't believe. They will be incapable of providing the kind of opposition that you need for democracy to function. And that's where we come in. Our ambition in this election is to establish our own bridgehead in Parliament to win many, 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 and we will, millions of supporters across this country. And we will then hold Keir Starmer to account. Who is best? Who is best at that? And I want people to think about that. Who will hold Starmer to account best? Will it be Ed Davey? All right, I didn't really mean that, I'm sorry. Will it be Ed Davey? Will it be Rishi's successor? Well, he'll be in California by then. I believe I can provide effective opposition to a Labour government to make them not backtrack on Brexit, to make them fearful of losing votes to us in the 2029 general election. I'm realistic. You know, I've got into this with a 5-year commitment. This is not just about a big hit on July the 4th. It's about becoming the opposition party in British politics with an aim to be the biggest party in the country by 2029. They're my aims, they're my ambitions. And don't worry, you won't hear too much about gender ideology from me. But you'll hear an awful lot about education. I am sick to death of our kids being taught like this. The idea that, you know, 8-year-old Johnny, who's white, is told he's an oppressor, and the 8-year-old black boy is told he's a victim. What kind of message is that to give children? This doesn't unite us, it divides us. And as Rupert said earlier, people shouldn't get jobs according to their sexual preference. I couldn't care less what people's sexual preference is. I'd rather they kept it to themselves, quite frankly. People should get on ability. People should succeed on hard work. And actually, let's be, as a party, let's unashamedly say, we think hard work is good. We think success is good. We want to encourage that. Because I tell you what's happening, a lot of our young, bright people are now leaving this country. They're going to Lisbon, they're going to Milan, many others are off to Dubai. For the older people in the audience, they'll remember the brain drain of the 1970s, when our brightest and best young accountants, young doctors were leaving the country in ever larger numbers. We're back to that. We have to have a Britain that is optimistic, a Britain that wants to create wealth, a Britain that believes that actually success should be good, and a Britain that actually goes back on law and order and says, it's unbelievable. You can go shoplifting and nick up to 200 quid's worth before anybody even prosecutes you. What kind of message is that? How have we got so many young people being seriously wounded or dying through knife injuries? Tell the police, use their powers. Let's get stop and search happening in our high streets every Saturday. So we know what we believe in. We know what we stand for. And we unashamedly say that it's time of British government put the interests of the British people before international agreements, before what other world leaders think. Let's get rid of all of this nonsense about diversity. Diversity, what's that doing in some of our inner cities? It's leading to completely separated groups, in some cases not even speaking our language. One nation, united. One nation that treats everybody equally. One nation that believes in itself. One nation that is proud of itself, proud of its history, and let's get a bit more optimism for our future. I'm very, very excited. Just 1 week in, post-retirement. But I'm very, very excited about the buzz and the momentum. And this very room, which is packed with 450 of you, they had to shut the gates. We could have filled this twice over. That's amazing. If we can do it here, we can do it in many, many other parts of the country. And I want to say a huge thank you to all of you for coming along this evening. I'll do some questions and answers in a minute. But I repeat the key theme of my speech. It is not nice or pleasant to be subjected to violence. I'm not paid for that. But I will not surrender. I will not give in to the mob. I'll go on fighting for what I believe to be right. Thank you very much indeed, everybody.